you either have a party, and you must have a party in parliament, or a coalition. So this party or the coalition will be responsible for making sure that the agenda that you sold to the people, and the agenda, it is translated into policy, it is translated into laws, so that that agenda can be implemented. So you are correct to say that there must be either a party, which is like the wind beneath the wings of the executive, or a coalition, and so that whatever agenda was agreed on and was the agenda which drove the election is implemented. But that does not mean that parliament in its totality is not going to oversight the executive. I yield.
Professor. Come back, Professor.
Yes.
Yeah. So, are we saying that the system that we have currently cannot work for us as Kenyans? And if indeed we are saying that, because it's clear that it doesn't seem to be working, then what could be the solution for us? Do we burn down the country? Do we go the military route and we say, let's bring in a version of Ogola, like the way the Sierra Leoneans have brought in Traore? How do we go about it? Or do we just keep quiet and let things just happen the way they're happening? Is there a solution for us? Or what do you see? Because for you, Kivuta Kibon, I'll tell you where I remember you from. Just hold on 1 second. This is very important for me. Because I remember exactly where we were having a discussion about you, and it was in 1998 or something like that, and we were talking about Safina Party. Were you in Safina?
No.
Yeah. So there's a party that you had started or something like that, and we were talking about you, and we were saying Kivuda is our guy. So do you also this is now the second part of the question. Do you also think that fire might have left you? Does that fire leave? Or is that fire suppressed maybe by 10 years of being in government?
Andrew, maybe this is the last, question I would like to answer, because we this is Motivational Monday, and now we are going into politics, a lot of politics. I am waiting to listen to what you began by really guiding us about, how to, relationships, things that really build us, so that we can build the Kenya that we want to build. That group is going to make a difference in the country. If it won't make a difference in the country, then I cannot be part of it. It's as simple as that.
So,
again, has grown organically. So it's not like the Lazarus or whoever it is waiting, to be called, but it is understanding the dynamics of how leadership develops, and as a result.
But Professor, what we want to know, and maybe this is what I'm curious about, and this is just for my own selfish gain. I want to know how they treated you as a minister. Yeah, and is it something that you do?
Okay.
Yeah, because we didn't understand when ODM, is it ODM or Azimio, gave away form of their prime, leaders, and they said go make these cabinet ministers, and the celebration that came with that. So why were they celebrating so much? What was that about? What comes with that seat that a whole community can start to celebrate, a seat in government?
You asked me my journey as a minister. Initially, after NAC in 2002 took over government, and Kibaki had been unwell, even though we had done significant work to make the opposition, actually a civil society, to make the opposition come into power, I was not a minister. And for 6 months, Kibaki, being unwell, was looking for me. and he would ask where is so and so, so and so, and he was not even remembering the name properly, until eventually I was made an assistant minister in the office of the president. Then I became an assistant minister in the office of the vice president. There's something we did with Mungatana. I think we went to help some people with a land issue. And, some people are not happy with that when you are, in the executive. So I became an assistant minister, VP's office. But in 2000 and end of 2005, or 2005 or 2006, I became the Minister of Environment. And afterwards, there was a problem with the minister who was in lands, and he had to resign. And so I became a minister of lands as well. So that for 17 months, I was a minister of both two ministries, environment and lands. And of course, it is not easy because, like lands, we tried at the cost to settle absentee land, to settle squatters who are on absentee landlords' land. And the ministry had problems, but we tried whatever we could. And it's not always easy when people are ministers, because sometimes you can be a minister and you are not a decision maker. The decisions are made by some not chicken cabinet, but kitchen cabinet, and it is not always easy as such. And that's part of the problem with our governments, that decision making is quite centralized. But now, coming back to the specific question of outcome.
Hold up, people, Professor. Let's go back to that. So when you say the decision making is centralized, so means you have an office that has no power?
It means that for many major decisions, ministers don't make them in our setup. When there are major decisions, of course you go to cabinet, yes. And in cabinet, you discuss whatever has been brought forward. But even before things are brought before cabinet, the situation in our country, the situation in many of the African countries, there's been a prior discussion of how the decision will be like. And so many times cabinet can just be a rubber stamp. And then sometimes you can get a permanent secretary who is more powerful than the minister. You can even get a director who is more trusted by the executive, by the president, that kind of stuff. So that we don't follow, what the constitution says. We don't follow what genuine bureaucratic systems do, unlike places abroad. So there is a problem. Those are some of the things that must be changed so that decision making is shared.
So, Professor, that was 2002, right? That's the last time you were directly in government. So how bad do you think things are in 2024? That's what, 20 years, 22 years?
Let me say that Kibaki did try to delegate authority, but and so in terms of delegation of authority, probably during that time, that is the period when there was more delegation of authority to ministers and to the ministries. As of now, since I'm not an insider, I cannot tell you specifically what happens, apart from the point I made earlier. The point I made earlier about on the whole, executive tends to dominate, and many of the ministers don't take major decisions, until the decisions come from a particular source within the kitchen cabinet.
So, but Professor, you are governor just 2 years ago. So I think if there's anybody who's updated about the intricacies of how the government works, it should be you. You're the one who was there the latest. No, I don't think there's anybody who has worked with the government. I don't know, maybe Samuel has, but Professor, you should be the one telling us whether this is working or is not working. Because I think that's the whole question. The question here today should be, is this working or is not working? And if it's not working, then what are we doing about it?
So, Andrew, you see, the way in which I can say whether the government is working or not, it is in the delivery of the services that are expected. And this is part of why the Gen Zs said we are not satisfied with the delivery of certain things. We are not satisfied with the corruption stuff. We are not satisfied, like Morara going around the country and saying that these projects are not working. And it's 2 years of this government working. Of course, now they have injected ODM in the government, and we have been promised that things are going to change. And these were 2 years of the first 2 years of teething problems and whatever. But the knowledge that I have about how government works, it is knowledge of, who does what, how things come from policy to implementation, those procurement systems. So yes, I know, what happens at the national level and what happens at the county level.
So my question, Professor. Sorry to interrupt so many times, but I don't think I'll get this chance to do this with you again. But so, Professor, do you think this system works, or should we get rid of the system as is? Do you think this system that we have right now, does it work? Because if we're talking about a revolution, then we're talking about changing something. So what are we changing? Are we changing the system, or are we changing the people who are in the system?
It is not enough, Anthony, to change the people. That is only part of the jigsaw puzzle. First of all, you see, our system basically is built on the colonial system. It is built on the colonial system of those who are in power really, on the whole, lording it over others and not allowing the democracy that is required, not allowing the public participation that is required. You see, for example, Andrew, if I was in a position to advise the government, which I'm not, like the business people, why not ask them, what do you want done in terms of policies so that the business environment changes, manufacturing industries can work, there can be more employment, particularly of young people, and they will tell you that if you have this kind of declaration.
Professor, I want to ask you this question, because what we're talking about is the ideal. The ideal is if we can all do these good things, but we never seem to do. There's no record of us ever being this way. There's no record of us ever being not corrupt. There's no record of us ever being transparent. There's no record of us ever being this kind of person. That's why we are here with you. Because for me, I saw your reign in Makueni as one of, I would say, some level of transparency. I don't know much, but I liked you when you were governor. So since we don't have these records that you're talking about, can we just shut down the whole system? Isn't that what Gen Z wanted? Where they say, hey, listen, we cannot trust any of you, including me and Anthony here and you. And they say, you know what, let's just shut down the system, and whoever comes out on top after that, then you can tell us which direction to go. Because when you think about it, Professor, it's too complex for our small minds to understand, to grasp.
I don't think so. I don't think that, Andrew, I don't think you guys, if we go back to the 1950s, where Akina Dedan Kimathi were fighting, for our independence. If we go back to the 1990s, and we come to 2020s. In 2020s, you have been able to shake a system more than maybe more than actually the 1950s and the 1990s. So I can't say that you guys are simple. I can't say that you are not able to to come together and say that this is the agenda that is needed. These are the people who should implement it. This is how it will be implemented. I don't think that, that is rocket science, which you can do given what you have done previously. And you can't shut down everything. Shutting down everything meaning that you say we are not going to have ministries, we are not going to have county government, we are not going to have, no. What you're saying is this constitution, let us implement it. If we implement and we want the people who will be able to implement
but Professor, why can't we say that? Because this is not working for us. The other day, you must have heard you must know about Moses Kuria. Moses Kuria said over 50% of what we collect is going into paying 1 million people. So 1 million people are taking 50% of what we collect, and that is not sustainable. I don't think anywhere in the world there's any business that operates that way. That half of what they make goes to paying 10% or 5% of the people who work in the company. That doesn't work. That doesn't make sense.
That is true, Andrew, and that is why I'm saying I thought the Gen Z, I thought the Gen Y, and I thought whoever you recruit from Gen Zote, including Andrew, who is it X? I thought that you want to make sure that that doesn't happen, and it doesn't happen by simply saying let's do what is right. What the Gen Zs are saying. What is difficult with the wealth declarations that public servants make? What is difficult with each year making them public? So that's something that is easy. What is difficult by saying that now procurement will be open? So you can take steps, incremental steps, and you can take those steps, make sure that, what is to prevent saying that, for example, within cabinet, within the chief officers, there must be this percentage of young people under 35. Because at Independence, Kibaki, Matiba, Michuki, Mboya, those people are in their 30s. So it is what you do intentionally if you want to make things better.
So, Governor, let me bring in Gashoka. I see he's blowing up my DM. Gashoka, you are as radical as Kibe. What are your thoughts?
Well, Kwanza, let me say hi to my brother, Professor Kibuda Kibwana. And I don't know where this I don't know where this image, Professor, that your teammate comes from. Perhaps because we are older than some of those in this space, because the Kibuda Kibwana I know is not timid. Kibuda Kibwana is in the history of Kenya a trailblazer. In fact, he was one of the critical people in the 90s as the co-convener of the Ufungamano Forum. He was leading then with David Alamba a movement called No Reforms, No Elections, of which I was party to. And actually the only independent media covering at the time was myself, Gitobwi Manyara, and Jeho Gatabaki, as Kivuda will remember. And one of the contributions Kivuda Kibwana has made to this country is beyond the economic prosperity of Makueni, in my humble view. Because the No Reform, No Elections clarion call of the 90s is one of the reasons that these Gen Z demonstrations that have happened this year have tested the 2010 Constitution. And in fact, in my view, William Ruto has not just violated the 2010 Constitution, but questions at the end of my presentation about what we can do about it will arise. But I just wanted to give a synopsis, and I know Professor, being the law professor he is, will agree with me. The movement of civilization from chiefdoms and tribal cocoon leaderships began in 2015 with the enactment of the Magna Carta in England, moving away to a parliamentary democracy away from the monarchy. This was later to manifest itself in the US in 1776 with the Declaration of Independence, and the French in 1785 when the French Revolution took down the monarchy. And for me, one of the reasons I celebrate the issue of multipartyism, and one of the reasons why it is a very urgent part in our history right now, is because if you read the 2010 Constitution in Chapter 4, Kenya is defined to be a sovereign republic. And under Section 4, Article 4, Subsection 2, the Republic of Kenya shall be a multi-party democratic state founded on national values and principles of governance. And why is Kenya a multi-democratic state? And why is Professor Kivutha Kibwana among the trailblazers? Is because they are the ones who did away with Kenya being a single-party state by bringing down President Moi and Kanu through Section 2A in the 90s, because the Ufungamano Forum was to transform itself to FORD, the Forum of Restoration of Democracy, that then led to Moi giving in to multi-party democracy. Now, the multi-party democracy, and part of my anger...
Hold up, Tony. Because I may understand what you're saying, Tony. I do understand everything you're saying. Because I was a teenager into a grown-up, an adult. So I saw all that happening, and you're older than me by just a few years. So I totally get you, but the Gen Z don't understand a thing. All you're saying is French. They have no clue what you're talking about. So we have I was
about to land by saying part of why you need a multi-party democracy is to hold the government of the day to account. And when you start to see a government, moving towards despotism and tyranny, is when they are trying to kill the opposition. So they cannot be held to account, and therefore we cannot have a transparent government. So what I'm trying to say is that William Ruto is not just a bad manager and a bad governor. He has a deliberate effort to claw back the gains of multipartyism so that his government cannot be held into account. And I'm agreeing with Andrew by saying that he is actually committing covert war on the country, because he's buying opposition party and opposition MPs so that there is no resistance and there is no holding to account of his government. Had there been no opposition, we would never have unraveled Goldenberg or agro-leasing. We would never have been able to hold those questions about Ouko's killing and Tom Mboya and JM. So what I'm trying to Tony,
I'm so grateful that I got you here, because now you've said some things that have, Goldenberg was when I was in high school. Okay, so I remember Goldenberg very well. But how far did we get with Goldenberg? Anglo-leasing and the rest. How far did we get with those? Because we are celebrating something that really never.
And I think that's what Professor Kibwana was saying, that the success of the young people of 2024 has been beyond our attempts in the 90s. In other words, I'm just adding, I'm adding water to the fertilizer by saying that this is a motivational day that you are hosting. And I'm trying to give hongera na pongezi kwa vijana wa Kenya, kwa wale walijitolea kwa mabarabara juu wanaendelea kujenga, or they are building upon some of the failures of the 90s not to succeed in what you are asking.
Tony, I want us to be very honest with these young men and tell them exactly where we went wrong and what they need to do for themselves right now. Because that's what they need. They need some direction. Right?
We cheated them. You are right. We cheated them in the construction of the 2010 Constitution. We cheated the young people because we erected two barriers which must keep certain people in power. We erected 50+1. Yani lazima upate 50+1, as a presidential candidate, and you must get 25% in half the counties. So by erecting these barriers in the 2010 Constitution, we were promoting tribal chiefs. So that if you are a Kikuyu tribal chief, you start with 30% of the vote or 40% of the vote. And if you are a Luo tribal chief, you start with 11 counties. So that the moment Andrew Kibe stands for president, where does he start? And so these things which were put in the constitution were not actually defined to develop new leadership and democratic growth. They were meant to entrench through a legal process the advantages of the old regime and the old people. So what did William Ruto do in 2022? He got together a tribal camp. He became tribal chief of the Kalenjin. He went to Mount Kenya and got a few guys and they made them chiefs within them, made a coalition, went to election, and they became a shareholders government. And what I'm saying to the young people to tell them why this is relevant is that, and this is why their revolution was so dangerous. It was tribeless, it was leaderless, it was not looking for chiefs. It was looking for merit. It was looking for people who could emancipate this country in the way in which Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King ran their struggle. And all the people who have vested themselves in Kenyan politics for years are scared of that because they can only harvest if they were to be able to celebrate an election again that would need tribal chiefs to be at the forefront of political amalgamation.
So, Tony.
Yes.
So, do you remember the Opus Dei guy, the central bank governor?
Yes, I do.
All right. So, if you were to put him against Kivutha Kibwana for 2027, who would you pick?
Personally, I think Kivutha Kibwana has done his part. I wouldn't ask him to become a president. I would choose a governor instead, but he's not the person I would rather. I would rather have Aoki or Motata or Murala. I would rather have...
Tutaunganisha stima, tutaunda barabara, tutajenga serikali na vijana ya bodaboda na mama mboga. So aka slogan ni kaga sha goa goa. Mr. President ni Ruto gani unatupeleka? Kusema education ni free na vile books ni expensive ni ku-exercise our minds. Kusema education ni free na jana kuna mtoi alisare shule juu alikosa uniform ni ku-exercise our minds. So unafilaje? Unafilaje sasa zenye urezo wako wanakuongoza national anthem na tujenga
one, I was number one. And when he was number two, I was then vice versa. We used to compete intellectually at Strathmore. And,
tutaunganisha stima, tutaunda barabara, tutajenga serikali na vijana ya bodaboda na mama mboga. So aka slogan ni kaga sha goa goa. Mr. President ni Ruto gani unatupeleka? Kusema education ni free na vile books ni expensive ni ku-exercise our minds. Kusema education ni free na jana kuna mtu
to go to school and to come home. So part of our friendship began on going to school. But if you remember, and Kibwana can confirm, in those days, St. Mary's was a competitor of Strathmore. But Strathmore was far better than Superior School because only Alliance would beat Strathmore and once in a while Mangu would come into play. But that is not for the younger people in the space. That was when there were three giants in education, Strathmore, Alliance, and Mangu High School.
So you guys knew each other before politics?
Oh yes, as I said, from Thika, because you remember our Sunday lunches were at Blue Post Hotel, which is owned by the Kenyatta family, and we were all residents of Thika. And in those days, Uhuru was a very easy guy. He would come to Blue Post and so on. In fact, people don't even know that Uhuru Kenyatta was a manager of Blue Post Hotel before he went to Amherst, where he did his degree at Ivy League in the US. And I went to the UK, but he went to the US, so we lost contact then and reassembled back in Kenya during the clamor for the 90s. At that time, when the 90s, things were together, Uhuru, Francis Michuki and others were part of the people asking for changes. But in terms of, yes, we met in the early days when we were going to school. And so we know each other from infancy and to childhood and so forth.
But did he ever give you like a post in Gava when he became president? or like when he was a minister?
Thank you for asking me that question, because everybody asks me that. I have the only position I've ever served in government I was appointed by Raila Odinga as the chief of protocol in the office of the prime minister. And that's the only position I've ever taken in government. And whereas Uhuru and I grew up together, my politics had been more aligned to that of populism and progressive politics than the path which Uhuru took. So I haven't actually worked with Uhuru politically. He's been my friend and he's my friend, a very good friend actually. But politically, I even worked with Baba when it was against Uhuru's interests.
Oh, interesting.
History will also remind you that when I was jailed by 7 judges of the Court of Appeal, setting legal precedent in Kenya.
Tony, we lost Tony. Samuel, I've been seeing, before Governor comes back, Samuel, I've been seeing your hand up for a minute. Say something.
Hey, good morning. Before I say anything else, I want to thank Professor Kivuda Kibwana, the first governor from Makueni County, over 20 years. And this guy may serve his public, may serve our nation, and gratitude, Manzen, and thanks. For me, corruption, it's money. When the government, when politicians back then, likes of Kivuda and among other people, they were more of pesa iko inazunguka as much plain. Professor anasema hapa centralization. But kwangu naangalia the root of everything hapa hivi. Corruption imekuwa rampant mpaka imecorrupt our mind. We just totally lost it. Unaona? Saizi our institutions zenye sisi tuko nazo, kiangalia the financial system, banking sector, unaona, the mobile money, the microfinance, the stock market, insurance, hiyo ndio ziko, and the regulatory bodies zenye zina control this kwetu. Central bank ina regulate our financial institutions, inaitwanga JCMA, capital markets, ni stock market na securities. Na ya mwisho inakuanga ARA, insurance regulatory authority ya insurance industry. Our financial institutions iko collided now with the government. The way pesa inazunguka kwa serikali, it's not the way inazunguka kwa private sector, and the corruption inazunguka more that way. You bring more votes, you get more money. Corruption, you get more positions within the government. Pesa inazunguka manze up and down without being regulated. Wewe ukituma saizi punch just hata so moja hata nini inaangalia unakatwa fees hapa mbele na chini, lakini when serikali na move funds from one place to another, there is no regulatory body, and if it's there ninye serikali imejisetia up itself. The committees, mwenye oversight committees tunaangalia, it's just a sham. Hakuna outcome itatoka. No day you'll ever see a politician on a handcuff. So we all know it's a game, but how does this stop? No.
So Samuel. Yeah. So that I'd ask Professor about what if we hanged the corrupt. You see?
Fine with me. So, you see?
How difficult would that be though? Yeah, just imagine that, because you'd have to go to the court of the appeal of the court of the appeal of the court of the appeal.
Hapana. Watu wanachoma wakiiba kuku, mbona mtu asichoma kiba 40 billion? Let me give you this scenario pia uone. As I used to be angry of what used to be happening with politics and how things ziko. Mimi nyinyi unajua nyinyi ni era za back then. Silikuwa nasikizanga ujamaa naitwanga nani hapa? Wewe Rumburu. Latest tukiendanga chuo kwa radio all the time. But unaona wakati nilikuwa najua project serikali imefanya, unakuwa frustrated the project haijafanyika. But the worst thing inafanya una jam ni kujua the cost of that stupid project. That cost ndio inafanya una jam vibaya sana. Ndio mimi nakwambia ukitumia moja as an example, watu watarudi line bana. Whatever it takes, we have to reinvent that wheel. Hiyo wheel ifanye, tunashinda tukichange, tunaweka moto, in bad of the same bullshit. You reinvent that wheel manze. Moja tu atumike kibe, just one. Mtu aonyesha tu ya kusema aje fishing. Hakuna presenter
hold up someone. Because I want to try and bring in the Bondo. Just 1 second. Just 1 second. I promise you, I'll bring you guys back in. I just want to have. We have some distinguished gentlemen in the house, and I want to hear from them. So it's not that I don't want to hear from you, but Eli, can you jump in here and then you redirect it and take it to either Kifuda or Tony?
Sure, that's an honor, Andrew, and thank you for having me. It's a beautiful weather in Nairobi. It's a long time since I enjoyed that, and I know with the cloudiness, people might not see the beauty of a country that we do have. So, greetings from Nairobi. Number two, quite a number of issues have been raised, including the issue of corruption, which remains a fundamental fight within and without the circles that are involved or directly affected. This morning, I saw a post that was made, I believe, a few days ago on a county from Taita Taveta. And on the county government of Taita Taveta, there is a project that was construction of the bridge at Weruga Ward. And looking at that thing they call a bridge, Andrew, you'll be surprised. It's what do we say, tree barks that have been laid across the river and in a bushy place, and then the costing of this comes to 1 million Kenyan shillings. So when you see these issues and people are concerned about corruption, it is not just but a feeling of dissolution. It's actually Kenyans who are expressing their concerns over things that will rather improve, starting as simple as their security, but also securing their livelihoods through economic growth. But then there is another player that we call the opposition, or what I will call now the minority team. I would love to listen from both Prof. Kivutha and Tony here. When you look at the current formulation of our political parties and the opposition or the minority, do you believe that they still stand to defend the public and their interest aligned with the dreams of Kenyans? We know governments will always push government agendas, but when you look at those who are supposed to now come and put these governments into check, including elected parliament, who to some extent imagine that it is their role to support government. In fact, forgetting the mere fact you are an elected member of parliament, whatever cadre of the government, you need to propagate that which is right for the people of Kenya. But you hear from Professor here that even policies and executive decisions are made, and CSS or ministers in his time only had to rubber stamp it. So what is the strength and the major role of the opposition as we speak today in the Kenyan context? I would love to hear from Prof, with your permission, Andrew, and then I'll also want to hear from Tony, if that's, thank you.
Andrew, Eli, can I say something?
Sure, Prof. The mic was yours.
Thank you. Actually, you have asked a question that I wanted also to ask Tony. And before asking, like repeating the question or amplifying the question you have asked, first of all, I think it is not constitutional, it is not legal for ODM to send people within government and then claim and then disown them and claim that it is still the opposition. I think that is wrong, and the correct thing to do would have been to relinquish the minority positions within National Assembly as well as Senate to what I will call Azimio B, because if ODM was Azimio A, then ODM and KKA are now together, and actually it would be a good thing if they went to the registrar of political parties, and made a legal coalition so that there is clarity in terms of who is who in government. But also, I think Tony will be able to perhaps comment on that. But I also wanted to ask him the question when he was asked whom would he recommend to be president. Of course, he said not the central bank governor. But the question is, what does he think should be the relationship between Azimio B? Because sometimes I think he talks about Kalonzo, Wamalwa, Munya, Kioni, that group, and this other group, what I want to call the other group of Akina Morara, Omtata, Kuru, Mukisa, Martha, Kigame, and Andrew today has been wanting to put me in that group. So what does he think that those groups should relate? And I think he's going to directly, therefore, answer what Eli has asked us. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Prof. And I think we'll be more than happy to hear from Tony, because he operates within these circles. And I also see Eugene is also with us here. He could be an addition to this talk. But of course, there are other Kenyans who are tuned in. And Andrew, my last question, because I tend to ask questions more than answers, is why I post the first issue on the opposition. The other day, we saw the group led by Wiper party leader Kalonzo Musyoka, joined up by the likes of Eugene Omalwa and who have you, now rallying to pose themselves as the new official opposition or the minority in the country. Now, with that in mind, I argue that